The envelope was small, pale blue, nothing special. But when Margaret Ellis saw her own signature printed on the loan approval inside, her hands went cold. She hadn't signed anything. Outside, the harbor was waking up. Seagulls, engines, the sound of waves against the dock. But inside her chest, something else was breaking. After 40 years of keeping other people's books clean, she was about to learn that the dirtiest numbers are the ones written in the name of love. My name is Margaret Ellis. I'm 66 years old, and I've lived in Rockford Bay my entire life. People here know me as the woman with the gray car and the tidy books. It's true. I've always liked order. Columns balanced, numbers matching, mornings predictable. After 35 years as an accountant, I still wake up at 6, even though no one's waiting for my reports anymore. Every morning I brew my coffee, open the kitchen blinds and watch the tide come in. The sea doesn't hurry. It always knows when to arrive. After breakfast I walk down to the harbor. There's a small wooden shack where the fishermen drop off their records. Crumpled receipts, scribbled notes, salt-stained envelopes. They call me Miss Margaret, even though I'm old enough to be their mother. I keep their finances straight, make sure they don't lose track of who owes what. In a town like this, money is like the tide too. It flows in, it flows out, and sometimes it takes people with it. I like to believe numbers don't lie. That's what makes them comforting. People though. People are different. Every first Friday of the month, I send money to my son, Ethan, and his wife Lydia. It's something I've done since the day they married. Ethan always says, "You don't have to, Mom." And I always answer, "I know." But I still do. Because mothers never really stopped worrying about whether their children are doing fine. Lydia is polite, always texting thank yous with heart emojis. She says it helps with the mortgage or daycare, or bills that just keep showing up. I never asked for proof. I trusted them. That's what family does. At night I cook simple meals, soup, maybe a piece of fish. I eat alone with the sound of the waves through the half-open window. The clock ticks loud in a quiet house. Sometimes I scroll through old photos of Ethan as a boy. Sand in his hair, freckles on his cheeks, smiling with both front teeth missing. I tell myself he's happy now, that Lydia takes good care of him. It's what I want to believe. The next morning I go through my routine again, balance sheets, ledger entries, neat handwriting, a sense of control. In small towns, control is how you survive. Chaos belongs to cities, not to people like me. The neighbors wave when I pass. "Morning, Margaret. Same time every day, huh?" I smile, holding my paper bag of groceries. They don't know how much I need the routine, how it keeps the silence from feeling too loud. Sometimes I wonder if Ethan ever tells Lydia about me, how I used to save every receipt, how I triple-checked the power bill before mailing it. He used to call that cute. Lydia probably calls it old-fashioned. But old-fashioned has kept me alive. Old-fashioned built this small house. Old-fashioned means I still believe that good intentions come back around. That afternoon, I finished reconciling the books for Captain Harris's boat. The numbers fit perfectly to the cent. I smiled. It's funny, when life starts to feel uncertain, the clean ledger feels like a prayer answered. Before dinner I checked my bank app on the phone, just like I always do before sending Ethan the monthly transfer. I looked at the balance, double-checked the account number, pressed send. $1,200, the same amount I've been sending for years. A small sacrifice for peace of mind. Outside, the gulls were circling. Someone was playing an old radio tune from a nearby porch. I could smell salt, oil, and fried fish in the air. It was the scent of home, of everything that felt steady. I had no idea then that this little ritual, the calm, the numbers, the routine, was already built on sand. Because sometimes what feels safe isn't safety at all. It's just the quiet before the storm. It was a quiet Thursday morning, the kind that smelled like salt and fresh bread. I stopped by Harbor Mart to pick up a few things: milk, flour, and a new notepad for my bookkeeping. The bell above the door rang, and I heard Noah Briggs behind the counter. Noah had been a soldier once. Now he ran the place on weekday shifts. He was the kind of man who remembered everything, names, faces, the way people liked their coffee. "Morning, Miss Margaret," he said, scanning the barcodes. "Still keeping everyone's accounts in line?" I smiled. "Someone has to, Noah. The sea might be messy, but numbers shouldn't be." He chuckled, then hesitated. I noticed the pause. He looked around. The store was empty except for an older couple by the freezers. Then he leaned a little closer. "Can I ask you something strange?" I raised an eyebrow. "That depends on how strange." "There was a man in here yesterday," he said, lowering his voice. "He asked about a woman who drives a gray sedan. Said she sends money every month through Lydia Crane." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard right. "Through Lydia?" He nodded. Said he wanted to confirm something about a loan application. But when I asked who he was, he just left. Didn't even buy anything. For a second, I didn't know what to say. The store suddenly felt smaller. The hum of the refrigerators grew louder, like a distant wave pressing against my chest. I forced a small laugh. Probably a mix-up. Maybe he meant someone else. Noah tilted his head, studying me. "Maybe. But folks don't drive all the way out here to ask about strangers, do they?" He slid my receipt across the counter. His hand was steady, mine wasn't. "Anyway," he said quietly, "you be careful, Miss Margaret. Some storms don't come from the sea." The words hung in the air longer than they should have. Outside, the sky was still blue. But the wind had changed, sharper, colder, carrying a hint of something I couldn't name. I walked back to my car, groceries rustling in the paper bag, heart beating faster than it needed to. I told myself Noah was mistaken, that it was nothing, that I was just overthinking like I always did. But as I turned the key in the ignition, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The man was standing at the far end of the parking lot, facing the harbor, hands in his pockets. He didn't move when I pulled out, didn't turn around. By the time I got home, I had convinced myself it didn't matter. Still, when I placed the receipt on the kitchen counter, I noticed my handwriting trembling slightly. That night I couldn't sleep. The sound of the waves, usually so calming, felt different, heavier somehow. And though I didn't want to admit it, Noah was right. Not every storm starts over water. A few days after that conversation with Noah, I decided to clean out my drawer of receipts, something I did at the end of every month. It was a habit that kept me grounded, a quiet ritual. Numbers had always made sense when people didn't. I laid the papers out across the kitchen table. Grocery bills, utility statements, transfer confirmations. Everything in its place. But then I noticed something strange. The receipts from the bank, the ones showing the money I'd sent to Ethan and Lydia, didn't line up with the days I remembered. One set processed, March 6. The next one approved, March 10th. And another confirmed, March 12th. But I had made all three transfers on the same morning, the first Friday of the month. I was sure of it. I frowned and reached for my phone, scrolling through my messages with Lydia. There it was, her text from that same day. "Thanks, Mom. We'll put this straight toward the mortgage." She even added a heart. Still, something felt off. Why would the bank split a single transfer into 3 separate approvals? I called the branch, waited on hold, and finally spoke with a young woman named Clara. She said, "Our system shows multiple deposits to the same recipient, but each was processed through a different intermediary account." I asked what that meant. She hesitated. "Sometimes, ma'am, when funds are redirected, they pass through holding accounts before reaching the final destination." Redirected. That word stayed in my head long after I hung up. That evening I called Lydia. She answered on speaker, her voice cheerful and a little too quick. "Oh, hi, Mom. We just finished dinner. Everything okay?" "Yes," I said slowly. "I was just reconciling my transfers. The dates don't match. Did something happen with your account?" There was a pause, a tiny breath. Then she laughed lightly. "Oh, that. Yeah, sometimes the app delays processing. You know how banks are. Takes a few extra days to clear. Oh, that. Yeah, sometimes the app delays processing. You know how banks are. Takes a few extra days to clear. I see, I said. My tone must have changed because she added, but don't worry. Everything went through fine. Ethan checked it himself. We talked a few minutes more. About the weather, about her garden, until the conversation dissolved into small talk. But after I hung up, I just sat there, phone still in my hand. I looked at the kitchen clock. The second hand moved in perfect rhythm, steady and predictable. I wished people were like that. I placed the receipts back in the envelope and slid them into the drawer. But my mind didn't settle. When you've spent a lifetime balancing ledgers, you can feel when something doesn't add up, even before you can prove it. Later that night I couldn't sleep. I got up, made a cup of tea and stood by the window. The sea was dark, restless, pulling against the shore. For the first time the sound didn't comfort me. It sounded like a warning. Trust doesn't vanish, I thought. It erodes quietly. A week later I logged into my bank account just to check my balance. Something I'd done every Friday morning for years. It should have been routine, familiar, comforting. But that day the numbers didn't comfort me. They confused me. Under recent activity I noticed transactions I didn't recognize, small amounts at first, then larger ones. The $500 withdrawal here. A $1,200 transfer there. Each marked under Ethan's name, but sent to accounts I didn't know. My stomach tightened. I scrolled down further, thinking maybe it was a mistake. But the pattern repeated, month after month, line after line. That evening I called Ethan. He answered on the third ring, voice warm, distracted. Hey Mom, everything okay? Yes, I said, hesitating. I just checked the joint account. There were a few transfers I didn't recognize. Do you know what they're for? He sighed. That kind of sigh people give when they think you're overreacting. Oh, that's just Lydia handling things, he said. She's been managing the bills, the insurance, all that stuff. You don't have to worry, Mom. I paused. But why are the payments coming from my account? He laughed softly, almost kindly. You know Lydia, she's efficient. Sometimes she just routes things for convenience. It's easier that way. For a moment I wanted to believe him. He sounded so sure, so calm. And I told myself maybe I am just being paranoid. Maybe this is what modern banking looks like now. Still, something in his tone made me feel small, like an old woman fussing over decimals. So I said nothing. I just whispered, all right, dear. I trust you. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the screen. The cursor blinked beside the word transfer. Over and over, like a heartbeat I couldn't quiet. I used to think trust was solid. Like stone. Once built, it stayed. But that night I realized trust isn't stone at all. It's glass. It only looks strong until something fine, something small begins to crack it. When I went to bed I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house felt louder. The clock ticking, the faucet dripping, the wind pressing against the window. And somewhere deep inside me, the safe little world I'd built, the routines, the balances, the belief that everything was in order, began to tremble. That was the night I first felt it. The wall I'd spent my life building, the one made of trust, love and predictability, wasn't as solid as I thought. It was starting to break. The next morning I brought out an old notebook, the same one I used back when I worked as a bookkeeper. The cover was worn, corners bent, but the pages were still clean, waiting. If there was one thing I knew how to do, it was track numbers. I started writing down every transfer I had made in the past year. Dates, amounts, references, even the little notes Lydia sent afterward. Mortgage covered, thank you. Car repairs done, you're a lifesaver. Each message felt warm when I first read it. Now it felt rehearsed. The more I wrote, the less the numbers made sense. Payments were too frequent, too uneven. Some months doubled, some skipped. When I checked my savings, I realized the balance had dropped faster than I remembered. I told myself it was just life getting expensive, bills, repairs, inflation. But the math didn't lie. It never did. That night I sat with a cup of tea gone cold, staring at the page full of ink. It wasn't anger I felt. Not yet. It was that quiet unease you can't name. Like hearing a faint leak in the house but not knowing where it's coming from. I thought of something my old mentor once told me. Numbers never betray you, Margaret. People do. I had laughed at him back then. I didn't find it funny now. I flipped to a new page and began another list, this time of questions. Why were there double withdrawals in June? Why did Lydia text me about rent when Ethan owned the house? Why were the transaction IDs slightly different every month? I stared at the questions for a long time. Not to solve them yet, but to remind myself they existed. And that's when I realized something deeper. Something I'd never questioned before. All my life I believed family meant safety. That blood protected you, that love guaranteed honesty. But maybe love doesn't guarantee truth. Maybe it just makes you blind to the lies you'd rather not see. Family gives you a sense of safety, but sometimes that safety is only an illusion. It's the illusion that tells you not to ask too many questions. Not to look too closely. Because if you do, you might see something you can't unsee. I closed the notebook, my fingers trembling slightly. No proof yet. No reason to accuse anyone. Just a gut feeling. The kind that hums quietly beneath the surface, waiting to be confirmed. Outside, the tide was rising, brushing against the rocks below the window. I listened for a while, then whispered to myself, "Trust the numbers, Margaret. Just trust the numbers." For days I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was overthinking, that age had made me suspicious. But the more I tried to push it away, the louder the doubt became. Every time my phone buzzed with a bank notification, my chest tightened. It wasn't fear of money. It was fear of what the truth might cost. One evening I ran into Noah Briggs again outside the Harbor Mart. He was stacking milk crates near his truck, the same calm look in his eyes. He greeted me like always, steady, polite. But then he said quietly, "You've been uneasy, haven't you?" I hesitated. "It's nothing. Just bookkeeping things." He nodded slowly like he already knew. My dad used to say, he told me, most people don't lie because they're evil. They lie because the truth costs more than they can afford. I looked at him, unsure what to say. He added, "Sometimes doing the right thing makes you the villain in your own family." That sentence hit harder than I expected. I drove home in silence. The sky was turning orange over the bay, the same color as the ledger I used to carry to work. When I walked into the house, the air felt heavy. The framed photos on the wall, Ethan's graduation, our last Christmas together, seemed to watch me as I passed. I sat at the dining table and opened my notebook again. On one page were the transfers. On the next, my notes about Lydia's explanations. None of it matched. Not the timing, not the numbers, not the feeling. I wanted to believe Ethan. I really did. He was my son. The boy who used to bring me wildflowers and say I was his best friend. But another voice inside me, the one that had guided me through a lifetime of balancing other people's accounts, whispered something colder. "Protect yourself." That night I made my decision. I opened my laptop and searched the bank's customer portal. If there were records beyond what I could see, I'd find them. I typed in my credentials, hands trembling slightly, and requested the full statement. Every transaction, every loan, every signature tied to my name. Then I closed the computer and just sat there, listening to the sound of the waves against the rocks outside. Doubt had grown roots inside me, deep and quiet. And I knew, once the truth arrived, there would be no going back. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. The kind where the air felt still, and even the house seemed to hold its breath. Lydia had stopped by earlier that day, cheerful, polite as ever. Dropping off some groceries she said she picked up for me. After she left, I went to tidy the kitchen. That's when I noticed it. A small silver USB drive, half buried in the side pocket of her tote bag. She must have forgotten it when she set her purse down on the table. For a moment I almost called her. Then something stopped me. Not suspicion exactly, but a quiet pull in my chest that said, wait. I took the USB, turned it over in my hand. Plain. Unlabeled. I plugged it into my laptop. The folder opened instantly. There was only one file. Householdbudget.xlsx. I hesitated before clicking it, as if the moment I did something would change. And it did. Rows and columns filled the screen, dense with numbers, dates, and accounts. First it looked ordinary. Then I saw my name. Not once, but dozens of times. Each entry labeled loan guarantee Ellis. The figures were large, 5,000, 10,000, sometimes more. And every one of them had Ethan's digital signature beside mine. Except I had never signed anything. I scrolled faster. My hands were shaking. The numbers blurred together. The cursor trembling over lines of debt I didn't know existed. One note in particular stopped me cold. Personal collateral verified. Property, Seaside Cottage, Rockford Bay. That was my home. My husband's legacy. My breath caught in my throat. For a long moment I couldn't move. I just stared at the screen. At the proof of something I wasn't ready to name. I tried to tell myself there had to be an explanation. The clerical error. The banking mistake. Maybe Lydia used my name accidentally. But deep down I knew. I had spent my life balancing other people's books, making sure every cent lined up. And there, in that endless spreadsheet, I saw the one thing that didn't add up: trust. I leaned back in my chair, my eyes burning. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I whispered to the empty room, Ethan, what have you done? And then I realized the truth wasn't hiding anymore. It was sitting right there in my hands, glowing on the screen like a wound that refused to close. I couldn't stop myself from opening the file again. The numbers were calling me back, daring me to understand. This time I went line by line. Column A, date of transfer. Column B, source account. Column C, recipient. Column D, note. I recognized every transfer. They matched the exact months I'd wired money to Ethan. Every emergency he'd mentioned, the car repairs, the home renovations, the business loan. They were all here. But the destinations were wrong. The money never went into their joint account. It went into Lydia's. Every single time. I scrolled further. There were withdrawals labeled investment fund, asset conversion, even property share. She wasn't using my help to keep their home afloat. She was building something under her name alone. The next tab on the spreadsheet made my stomach drop. A list of transactions between Lydia's account and a private real estate firm in Portland. Dozens of them. Small enough to avoid notice, but steady like drops of water carving through stone. I leaned back, numb. All the years I'd spent saving, counting, making sure every dollar had purpose. And here it was, moving like smoke through invisible hands. I thought of Ethan's voice on the phone. Lydia handles the finances. Don't worry, Mom. Those words echoed now, hollow, rehearsed. I wanted to believe he didn't know. That he was blinded by love, not complicit. But the file said otherwise. His name appeared in every digital signature. His initials typed beside hers again and again. That's when the truth settled in. It wasn't just my savings. It was my home, my peace, my trust. All traded and signed away in silence. I sat there for a long time, staring at the glow of the screen, realizing how heavy truth can feel when it finally lands. Because truth always has a price. And maybe that's why people run from it, not because they don't see it coming, but because deep down they know what it will cost to face it. I closed the laptop slowly. The reflection of my face lingered on the black screen, older, tired, but steady. I whispered to myself, barely audible, the price of truth is peace. And I'm ready to pay it. That night I drove to their house. No warning, no call. Just the steady sound of my tires against the wet road. When Lydia opened the door, her smile froze halfway. Margaret, what a surprise, she said. Her tone was sweet, but her eyes flickered. Ethan came from the living room, still holding his phone. Mom, is everything okay? I didn't answer. I walked in slowly and placed the USB on the dining table, the same table I'd helped them buy last Christmas. Ethan frowned. "What's this?" I said quietly, something I wasn't supposed to see. He looked at Lydia, then back at me. "Mom, you're scaring me." "What are you talking about?" I turned the laptop toward them, the spreadsheet already open. Line after line. My name. Their signatures. The totals. The room went still. Ethan's voice dropped. "Where did you get this?" "From your wife's bag," I said. "I was looking for the truth. And I found it." Lydia crossed her arms. "You had no right to go through my things." "I had every right," I said. "You used my name, my house, my trust." Ethan's face turned pale. "Lydia, please tell me this isn't what it looks like." But Lydia didn't flinch. She took a deep breath and said calmly, "It wasn't greed, Margaret. It was business." Those words, simple, cold, hit harder than any shout could have. Business. That's what my life savings had become. Not help. Not family. A transaction. Ethan stepped back, shaking his head. "You told me it was temporary," you said. She cut him off. "And it was until your mother decided to snoop." I looked at both of them. No anger left, just a quiet kind of exhaustion. "I gave you what I had because I trusted you," I said softly. "I thought I was building your future. I didn't realize I was selling my past." No one spoke after that. Only the ticking of the wall clock filled the silence, each second heavier than the last. Ethan sank into a chair, staring at the numbers like they might rearrange themselves into something less painful. Lydia turned away, pretending to fix her hair, pretending this wasn't happening. I gathered the USB and closed the laptop. "I'm not here to fight," I said. "I just wanted you both to see what you've done." Then I walked toward the door. My hands didn't shake this time. Behind me I heard Ethan whisper, "Mom, wait." But I didn't. Some truths don't need an argument. They only need to be seen. The house was silent after that night. No shouting, no apologies. Just the quiet hum of the fridge and the sound of the wind pushing against the windows. I stood by the table for a while, staring at the empty chairs. The same chairs where we used to laugh, share meals, talk about plans that never truly existed. Now they looked like witnesses too tired to care. Ethan sat frozen, his hands tangled together, eyes on the floor. Lydia turned away, pretending to clean a spot on the counter that wasn't there. No one said a word. I reached for the USB, slipped it into my coat pocket, and straightened up. The air felt colder than before. Through the open window I could hear the waves hitting the rocks, steady, endless, unbothered by human noise. I took one last look at them and said quietly, "You don't need to explain anything. The truth already did." Then I turned and walked out. The night air met me like a wall, sharp, cold, honest. I closed my eyes for a second and let it wash over me. No anger, no revenge, just release. As I walked down the path toward my car, I realized something. Justice doesn't shout. It breathes in the silence after truth is spoken. And sometimes that silence is the loudest sound in the world. It happened 2 days later. Early morning at the harbor bank. Lydia walked in, head high, sunglasses on even though the sky was gray. She went straight to the counter, handed over her card, and said she wanted to make a withdrawal. A large one. The clerk smiled politely, typed something, then frowned. She looked at Lydia again. "Could you please wait a moment?" Minutes passed. 2 officers entered quietly from the side door. Lydia froze. Her hand tightened around her purse. Then she whispered, "This must be a mistake." But it wasn't. The loans, the transfers, the forged signatures, it had all caught up with her. By noon, every phone in town was buzzing. The story spread faster than the tide. Ethan came to my house that evening, eyes red, voice shaking. "They took her, Mom. They said it was fraud." I didn't say anything. I just poured him a glass of water and let him sit. He buried his face in his hands. I should have seen it. I should have known. But I knew guilt was already doing what punishment never could. Through the window I could see the lighthouse flashing in the distance. Steady and different. It had seen storms before. It would see them again. I thought about Lydia. For all her cleverness, she'd never understood one simple truth. You can take someone's money. You can even take their name. But once you take their peace, life finds a way to make you pay it back. Some lessons don't come cheap. They cost peace. It was 3 weeks before I saw Ethan again. The wind at Rockford Pier was sharp that morning, carrying the smell of salt and rust. I was watching the boats leave the harbor when I heard footsteps behind me. "Mom," he said quietly. I turned around. He looked thinner. His eyes tired like he hadn't slept in days. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then he said almost in a whisper, "I didn't see it. I didn't want to." I nodded slowly. "I know." He looked at the water, his voice breaking. "You warned me so many times. I thought you were just being cautious." I stepped closer. "Sometimes love makes us blind, Ethan. But truth opens the eyes we were afraid to use." He took a deep breath and I saw the tears he'd been holding back. When he finally reached out, I didn't hesitate. We stood there holding on, the wind pulling at our coats but not at our hearts. There were no apologies, no long explanations. Just the sound of the sea beneath us, steady, forgiving. In that moment I realized forgiveness doesn't need words. It just needs two people brave enough to face the truth together. The next morning, we met again by the window overlooking the harbor. The air smelled of salt and coffee that had long gone cold. The cafe was almost empty, just us, 2 cups untouched, and the sound of the tide brushing the pier. Ethan stared out the window for a long time before speaking. "I keep wondering what would have happened if you hadn't said anything." I didn't look at him. I just said if I had stayed silent we'd both still be living a lie. He nodded slowly. His voice was quiet, almost ashamed. I thought silence kept the peace, but it only kept the wound open. We sat there, letting the morning light settle between us. No need for more words. The sea moved as if to remind us. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning how to keep moving even after the storm. And as I watched the tide pull back, I finally understood. The sea forgives not by forgetting, but by keeping the tide moving. I used to think silence was love, that staying quiet meant keeping the peace, protecting what little harmony was left. But silence doesn't protect. It hides the wound so it can keep bleeding. For years I confused kindness with surrender. I told myself patience was strength when really it was fear wearing a calm face. Fear of losing my family. Fear of being the one to break the illusion. Now I know better. Love without truth isn't love at all. It's fear in disguise, gentle, polite, and poisonous. Quiet justice isn't about revenge. It's about standing still when everything inside you wants to scream. It's about choosing truth, even when it costs you peace. I didn't expose Lydia to ruin her. I did it to free myself from silence, from guilt, from pretending. Because sometimes the only justice we ever get is the kind that restores what we almost lost inside ourselves. And for me, that was my peace. No one ever teaches us how to doubt the people we love. We grow up thinking love means trust without question, faith without proof. But real love means facing the truth even when it hurts. That night, I sat by my desk with the same old notebook I'd used for years. The pages smelled faintly of salt and ink. I opened it to a clean page and wrote slowly, "Kindness without boundaries becomes the prey of greed." I closed the book and watched the light fade across the harbor. The water moved softly, calm after the storm. For the first time in a long while, I felt something close to peace. Quiet justice isn't revenge. It's restoration. The slow rebuilding of what betrayal tried to destroy. What would you do if the one you trusted betrayed you? Subscribe for more stories like this.